Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Liberty, watching the stars through the massive viewport. 3 years had passed since humanity joined the Galactic Council, and Jake still felt proud every time he saw the Council's symbol on his uniform. The Liberty was humanity's finest warship, stationed at Kepler Station alongside vessels from dozens of other species. Jake had worked hard to earn his position as the flagship's commander. Admiral Lisa Carter had personally chosen him for this role after his successful missions in the Centauri system. He understood the responsibility that came with representing humanity among the galaxy's oldest civilizations. The bridge hummed with quiet activity as his crew performed their daily duties. Lieutenant Ben Rodriguez monitored the tactical systems, while Dr. Helen Brooks reviewed scientific data from their latest survey mission. These were good people, Jake thought. The best humanity had to offer to their galactic neighbors. A sharp beep interrupted his thoughts. Communications Officer Danny Walsh turned from his station with a serious expression. "Captain, we're receiving an emergency transmission from Council Headquarters. Priority Alpha." Jake moved to the command chair. Priority Alpha meant urgent Council business that required immediate attention. "Put it through the main display, Danny." The viewport transformed into a communication screen showing the familiar Council chambers on the capital world of Nexus Prime. Ambassador Paul Davis appeared first, his face grave as he took his seat among the other species representatives. Paul had been humanity's voice on the Council since the beginning, working tirelessly to build trust and cooperation. The Zephyrian Council leader, a tall being with silver skin and multiple arms, called the session to order. His voice carried the weight of authority built over centuries of galactic leadership. "Fellow Council members, we face a crisis that threatens all organic life in our galaxy." Jake felt his chest tighten. In 3 years of Council membership, he had never heard such alarm in the leader's voice. Around the chambers, representatives from the Altarian Federation, the Centauri Alliance, and dozen other species shifted nervously in their seats. "Our deep space monitors have detected massive energy signatures in the outer rim," the Council leader continued. "Ancient artificial intelligence networks dormant for millions of years have begun to awaken. These systems show clear hostile intent toward all biological life forms." Dr. Brooks looked up from her station, concern evident in her eyes. She had studied ancient civilizations during her years at Cambridge before joining the fleet. Jake knew she understood better than most what such a discovery could mean. The Council leader activated a holographic display showing the affected region. Red markers indicated AI activity across multiple star systems, with energy readings that dwarfed anything in the current galactic database. "These machines possess technology far beyond our current capabilities. They have already begun constructing what appears to be a massive fleet in the Vega system." Ambassador Davis raised his hand to speak. "What are our response options, Council leader? Humanity stands ready to assist in any way possible. Your eagerness to serve honors your species, Ambassador Davis." The Council leader replied, "All member nations must contribute to this effort. We are authorizing the largest joint military operation in Council history." Jake watched as the voting began. Species after species voted to approve the military response. The Altarians, known for their caution, voted yes immediately. The Centauri Alliance, usually slow to commit to military action, agreed without debate. When Ambassador Davis cast humanity's vote in favor, it was unanimous. "Excellent," the Council leader announced. "Fleet Command will distribute specific assignments within the hour. This threat requires swift action before these AI systems become fully operational." The transmission ended, leaving Jake's bridge in tense silence. He had participated in many Council operations, but nothing of this scale. The idea of ancient machines awakening to destroy organic life sent a chill down his spine. Within minutes, Admiral Carter's face appeared on the screen. Her usually calm demeanor showed signs of strain. "Jake, I'm sending you new orders directly from Council Command. The Liberty will lead a joint strike force to establish a forward operating base in the Vega system." "Understood, Admiral. What's our timeline?" "Departure in 6 hours. You'll have support vessels from the Altarian Third Fleet and Centauri Rapid Response Units. This is our chance to show the Council what human leadership can accomplish." Jake nodded, feeling the familiar mix of excitement and responsibility that came with important missions. "We won't let you down, Admiral." As the connection closed, Jake turned to address his crew. "All hands, this is the captain. We've received orders for an emergency deployment to counter an AI threat in the Outer Rim. Begin immediate departure. Preparations. The bridge erupted into controlled activity as his officers carried out their duties. Jake watched Ben Rodriguez coordinate with the tactical department, while Danny Walsh established communication links with their support vessels. This was what he loved about his crew. They responded to challenges with skill and determination. Dr. Brooks approached his chair, holding a data pad with readings from the Council's transmission. Captain, I've been analyzing the energy signatures they showed us. Something doesn't seem right. What do you mean, Helen? The patterns don't match any known AI technology in our databases. The harmonic frequencies are all wrong for mechanical systems. It looks more like organic neural activity, but on a massive scale. Jake frowned. Helen was one of the sharpest scientists in the fleet, and her concerns usually proved valid. Could it be a new type of AI we haven't encountered before? Possibly, but the stellar cartography bothers me too. The Vega system doesn't have the right conditions for ancient AI construction. The radiation levels would have degraded any technology over millions of years. Before Jake could respond, Lieutenant Rodriguez called out from his station. Captain, Council liaison officers are coming aboard. They say they have additional mission briefings. 2 aliens in Council uniforms entered the bridge minutes later. The lead officer, a Centauri with the rank insignia of a commander, approached Jake with a formal bearing. Captain Morrison, I am Commander Veltar. We are here to ensure proper coordination with Council forces. Welcome aboard, Commander. We're always happy to work with our allies. The situation is more urgent than initially reported, Veltar continued. Council intelligence suggests the AI systems may activate their offensive capabilities within days. Any delay could result in catastrophic losses. Helen stepped forward. Commander, could we review the detailed sensor data? As the mission's science officer, I need to understand exactly what we're facing. Veltar's expression remained neutral. All necessary information has been provided, Doctor. Council Command emphasizes that speed is essential. Analysis can be completed during transit. Jake noticed Helen's frustrated expression but decided to trust Council expertise. They had been exploring the galaxy for thousands of years while humanity had barely left their solar system a century ago. Very well, Commander. We'll depart as scheduled. As the Liberty and its escort vessels prepared for hyperspace jump, Jake stood once again at the viewport. Earth was thousands of light years away, along with billions of humans who trusted him and others like him to represent humanity well among the stars. He thought about his family back home, about the children who dreamed of exploring the galaxy, about the future humanity was building as part of the galactic community. The Council had welcomed them as equals, treating human opinions with respect and giving them important responsibilities. The hyperspace engines powered up with their familiar low hum. Jake looked at his crew one final time before giving the order. All ships, this is Morrison. Jump when ready. The stars stretched into lines of light as the fleet entered hyperspace, carrying them toward what they believed would be humanity's greatest contribution to galactic security. None of them suspected they were flying into the most carefully planned trap in galactic history. The Liberty dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Vega system, and Captain Jake Morrison immediately knew something was terribly wrong. Instead of the empty space where ancient AI machines were supposed to be building their fleet, hundreds of Council warships waited in perfect battle formation. Ben, what am I looking at? Jake asked his tactical officer, though his stomach already told him the answer. Lieutenant Ben Rodriguez stared at his displays with growing horror. Captain, those are Council vessels. Altarian battlecruisers, Centauri destroyers, Zephyrian command ships. They're all powered up and targeting us. Jake felt the blood drain from his face. The ships arranged before them represented the combined military might of a dozen Council species. Their weapons were hot, shields were up, and every gun was pointed directly at the human fleet. Communications, try to contact Admiral Carter, Jake ordered, but even as he spoke, he knew it was too late. The trap had been perfectly planned, and they had walked right into it. Danny Walsh worked frantically at his station. Captain, I'm getting jamming signals from the Council fleet. They're blocking all our long-range communications. Dr. Helen Brooks rushed to Jake's side, her face pale with realization. Captain, the energy signatures we detected weren't from ancient AI systems. They were from this Council fleet powering up their weapons. We've been deceived. Before Jake could respond, the main view screen activated without their input. The face of Council Leader Zarthek appeared, but gone was any pretense of friendship or cooperation. His expression was cold and calculating. "Captain Morrison and all human forces," Zarthek began, his voice carrying across the fleet. "You are here because the Galactic Council has made a decision about humanity's future in our galaxy." Jake stepped forward, anger rising in his chest. "Council Leader, what is the meaning of this?" "We came here to help fight the AI threat as requested." "There is no AI threat, Captain. That was a fabrication designed to bring your forces away from Earth's defenses and into our trap." Zarthek's words hit Jake like physical blows. "The Council has determined that humanity represents an unacceptable risk to galactic stability." The truth crashed over Jake like a wave. Every friendly gesture, every welcome, every invitation to join galactic society had been part of a larger plan. The Council had never intended to accept humanity as equals. "Your species advances too quickly," Zarthek continued. "In 3 years you have matched technological developments that took other species decades to achieve. Your military thinking is unpredictable and dangerous. Your population grows too fast, and your expansion into space threatens the established order." On his tactical display, Ben Rodriguez was tracking more horrifying news. "Captain, I'm detecting similar attacks throughout human space. Council forces are hitting our colonies simultaneously. This isn't just about our fleet." Jake felt sick as he realized the scope of the betrayal. While they had trusted their alien allies, those same allies had been planning humanity's destruction. Every piece of intelligence shared, every friendship built, every cooperative mission had given the Council exactly what they needed to plan this coordinated strike. "You used our trust against us," Jake said, his voice barely controlled. "Your trust was a weakness we exploited effectively," Zarthek replied without emotion. "The Council cannot allow a species like humanity to grow stronger. Today we solved the human problem permanently." Helen Brooks was working desperately at her science station. "Captain, I'm detecting weapon signatures from every Council ship. They're preparing to fire." Jake looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. These were good people who had believed in building a better future among the stars. They had served with honor and dedication, representing the best of humanity to the galaxy. Now they were going to die because other species feared what humanity might become. "Ben, can we break through their formation?" "Negative, Captain. We're outnumbered 50-1 and they have us surrounded. Even if we could damage a few ships, they'd destroy us long before we could escape." Jake activated the ship's internal communications. "All hands, this is the captain. The Council has betrayed us. They brought us here not to fight AI machines, but to eliminate humanity from the galaxy. We're going to fight, but our chances are not good. Send any final messages to your families now." The first Council salvo lit up space around them. The Liberty shook as enemy fire struck their shields. Jake watched his escort vessels, brave ships crewed by humans who had volunteered to explore the stars, disappear one by one under the overwhelming firepower. Helen Brooks suddenly looked up from her station with fierce determination. "Captain, I can send a warning message back to Earth, but I need to use our emergency quantum transmitter. It will drain all our power." "Do it," Jake ordered without hesitation. If they were going to die, at least Earth would know what happened. Helen's fingers flew across her controls as she composed the message. Jake watched her work while Ben Rodriguez returned fire at the Council ships, knowing their weapons could barely scratch the enemy's shields. "Message sent," Helen announced. "I've told Earth about the betrayal and warned them about the coordinated attacks. General Sam Tucker should receive it within minutes." The Liberty's shields failed under continuous fire. Jake felt the deck shake as enemy weapons began hitting their hull. Around him, control panels sparked and crew members worked to keep their ship operational despite the damage. "Captain, we've lost main power," Ben reported. "Weapons are offline and life support is failing." Jake looked at the tactical display showing the overwhelming Council forces still firing on the few remaining human ships. An idea formed in his mind, desperate but possibly effective. "Ben, can you give me ramming speed toward their flagship?" "Sir, that would be suicide. We're dead anyway. But maybe we can take some of them with us and send a message back to Earth about what we found here." Ben nodded grimly and began working at his station. "Ramming course plotted, Captain. All remaining power to engines." As the Liberty accelerated toward the massive Council flagship, Jake activated the emergency recording system. His final words would be transmitted automatically if anyone ever recovered the ship's black box. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the UES Liberty, to anyone who finds this record. The Galactic Council betrayed humanity. They used our trust and friendship to plan our destruction. Remember what they took from us. Make them pay for every human life lost today. The Liberty struck the Council flagship's shield generators at maximum velocity. The explosion tore through both ships, creating a brief moment of chaos in the enemy formation. In that moment, 3 small human escort vessels managed to escape into hyperspace, carrying news of the betrayal back to human space. Jake Morrison died believing his sacrifice might help save his species. He was right. His final message, combined with Helen Brooks's warning transmission and the testimony of the surviving crews, would transform humanity from trusting galactic citizens into something far more dangerous. The Vega Massacre, as it would later be known, marked the end of humanity's innocent faith in galactic cooperation. What emerged from the ashes of that trust would haunt the Council for years to come. 6 months after the Vega Massacre, Earth looked like a completely different world. General Sam Tucker stood in the war room deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, staring at holographic displays that showed humanity's new reality. The friendly blue and green markers that once represented Council allies had been replaced with red threat indicators surrounding human space. Tucker had been a career military officer before the Council betrayal, but the gentle diplomacy of the past 3 years felt like a distant memory. The message from Dr. Helen Brooks and the testimony of the 3 surviving ships had changed everything. Humanity now understood that the galaxy saw them not as partners, but as a threat to be eliminated. "General, Dr. Susan Walsh is here for the briefing," announced his aide. Colonel Frank Miller. Dr. Walsh entered the room, carrying a thick folder marked with the highest security classification. She had been Harvard's leading expert on military psychology before the betrayal. Now she served as Earth's chief strategist for what everyone simply called the response. "General Tucker, I present the Terra Protocol," she said, placing the folder on the conference table. "Our analysis of the Council's mistake and our recommendations for action." Tucker opened the folder and scanned the first page. The words were clinical and precise, but they described a transformation that would have horrified humanity just months earlier. "You're recommending we abandon any attempt at reconciliation." The Council made their position clear at Vega, Walsh replied calmly. "They see us as a problem to be solved through extermination. Trying to negotiate with people who want you dead is pointless. Instead, we should use our advantages to become something they fear more than they hate us." Tucker continued reading. The Terra Protocol detailed humanity's unique strengths in ways that made him uncomfortable. Psychological warfare, unpredictable tactics, adaptive thinking, and what Walsh called comfortable ruthlessness when survival was at stake. "You want us to become the monsters they think we are." "No, General. I want us to become something worse than monsters. Monsters can be understood and fought. I want us to become incomprehensible." The briefing room door opened to admit Commander Ryan Phillips, one of the survivors from Vega. Phillips had commanded the escort vessel that brought word of the betrayal back to Earth. The experience had changed him in ways that were obvious to anyone who looked at his eyes. "Commander Phillips will lead our first new operation," Walsh continued. "We call it the Ghost Fleet Initiative." Phillips stepped forward and activated another holographic display. This one showed ship designs unlike anything in current human military doctrine. The vessels were painted matte black, equipped with experimental stealth systems, and designed to operate independently for months. "These ships won't engage Council forces directly," Phillips explained. "Instead, they'll appear at the edges of Council space, observe, and disappear. We want them to know we're watching, but we won't give them anything to shoot at." Tucker studied the designs with growing understanding. Psychological warfare. "You want to make them paranoid?" "The Council species are used to predictable conflicts," Walsh added. "They fight with honor codes and established rules. They announce their intentions and engage in formal battle. We're going to do none of those things." Over the following weeks, Tucker watched humanity transform in ways that both impressed and disturbed him. The betrayal had awakened something in his species that had been sleeping during their brief period of galactic cooperation. Human engineers worked around the clock developing new technologies, but not the kind they had shared freely with Council allies. Dr. Lisa Chang, working in laboratories buried miles underground, led what she called Project Prometheus. Her team had studied every piece of Council technology they could acquire during their 3 years of cooperation. Now they were using that knowledge to create weapons. specifically designed to exploit the weaknesses of each alien species. The Altarians have excellent hearing, but it makes them vulnerable to specific sound frequencies, Chang explained during one of Tucker's visits to the lab. The Centauri rely on electromagnetic navigation systems that can be disrupted with the right interference patterns. Every species that betrayed us gave us information about how to hurt them. Tucker watched human scientists work with an intensity he had never seen before. The betrayal had not broken humanity's spirit. Instead, it had focused their abilities in ways that made him wonder what his species was truly capable of when survival was at stake. The first Ghost Fleet operation launched 3 months after the Terra Protocol was approved. Commander Phillips led 12 black ships into Council space, with orders that would have seemed impossible before the betrayal. They were to appear near Council colonies, make their presence known, then vanish without engaging. The psychological impact was immediate. Council forces had been expecting humanity to either surrender or launch desperate attacks against superior numbers. Instead, human ships began appearing everywhere and nowhere, watching from the darkness of space before disappearing like phantoms. The Ghost Fleet's signature tactic became leaving behind small devices near Council installations. These artifacts did no physical damage but emitted low-frequency signals that created unease and sleep disturbances in most alien species. Council scientists could find nothing dangerous about the devices, but their presence made entire populations nervous and afraid. "It's working exactly as we predicted," Walsh reported during a strategy meeting. "Council forces are becoming increasingly paranoid. They're jumping at shadows and wasting resources on false alarms." Tucker reviewed reports from across Council space. Alien colonies were demanding increased security. Council military units were exhausting themselves chasing ghost contacts that appeared on sensors, only to vanish when ships arrived to investigate. The psychological pressure was exactly what humanity had intended. The first major human retaliation came at Proxima Station, a Council research facility in neutral space. Commander Phillips led the assault personally, but it was unlike any military operation in galactic history. The ghost ships didn't destroy the station or kill its inhabitants. Instead, they systematically disabled every system, stranded the alien researchers, and left them floating helpless in space. The message they left behind was simple but effective. "This is mercy. Next time we won't be so kind." Council forces arrived at Proxima Station 6 hours later to find the researchers alive but terrified. The humans could have killed everyone easily but had chosen not to. The demonstration of capability combined with restraint sent exactly the message humanity intended. Tucker realized that Dr. Walsh had been right about the psychological impact. The Council could have responded to brutal attacks with their own brutality. Instead, they faced an enemy that could have destroyed them but chose not to, leaving them wondering when that mercy might end. As reports came in from across the galaxy, Tucker began to understand what humanity was becoming. They were no longer the hopeful species that had joined the galactic community 3 years earlier. The betrayal had transformed them into something that fought not with superior firepower, but with the far more dangerous weapons of fear and uncertainty. The Council had wanted to eliminate the human problem before it became too dangerous to handle. Instead, their betrayal had created exactly the threat they had feared, but in a form they were completely unprepared to fight. 1 year after the betrayal, Council leader Zarthek stood in his private chambers staring at reports that filled him with growing dread. The humans were not fighting the way any civilized species should fight. They struck from shadows, exploited weaknesses, and turned the Council's own systems against them in ways that violated every rule of honorable warfare. Admiral Kate Miller had survived the Vega massacre by pure luck. Her small escort ship had been positioned at the edge of the formation when the trap was sprung, allowing her to escape into hyperspace while the Liberty died covering their retreat. Now she commanded humanity's deep space reconnaissance operations, and her reports painted a picture of a galactic community falling apart under psychological pressure. The Altarian Third Fleet has requested emergency shore leave, Miller reported during her weekly briefing to General Tucker. Their crews are suffering from what their doctors call phantom contact syndrome after 6 months of chasing our ghost ships. Tucker studied the intelligence reports spread across his desk. Every Council species was showing signs of the strain that humanity's new warfare doctrine was designed to create. What about the Centauri Alliance? They've pulled their border patrols back 50 light-years from human space. Their commanders claim it's for tactical repositioning, but our sources say their crews are refusing orders to patrol areas where ghost ships have been spotted. The transformation in human warfare had exceeded even Dr. Walsh's predictions. Instead of fighting massive space battles with predictable outcomes, humanity had embraced what she called asymmetric psychological conflict. The Council faced an enemy that seemed to be everywhere and nowhere, capable of striking at any time but choosing when and how to reveal their presence. Dr. Helen Brooks had survived Vega by staying at her science station until the last possible moment, ensuring her warning transmission reached Earth before the Liberty was destroyed. Now she led the Tactical Analysis Division, studying Council psychology with the same dedication she had once applied to ancient civilizations. The Council species share a common weakness, Brooks explained during a strategy meeting. They're used to conflicts with clear rules and predictable patterns. Their entire military doctrine is based on formal engagements between organized fleets. When we refuse to fight that way, we break their ability to respond effectively. Her analysis had identified specific psychological pressure points for each Council species. The Zephyrians, with their rigid hierarchical society, became paralyzed when faced with unpredictable threats they couldn't categorize. The Altarians' acute hearing made them vulnerable to the sonic devices that ghost ships left behind. The Centauri relied so heavily on their computer systems that even minor electronic interference sent them into panic. We're not just fighting their military forces, Brooks continued. We're attacking their entire way of thinking about conflict and showing them that all their advantages mean nothing against an enemy who won't play by their rules. D-Day, turning point came when human forces achieved something the Council had thought impossible. They infiltrated the central communication hub on Titan Prime, the heavily fortified station that coordinated all Council military operations across the galaxy. Commander Phillips had led the operation personally, using techniques that no Council strategist could have anticipated. Instead of attacking the station with overwhelming force, his ghost ships had simply drifted closer over several weeks, disguised as space debris. When they finally moved, the station's defenders had barely seconds to react. But the humans didn't destroy the communication hub or steal its secrets. Instead, they used it to broadcast something far more damaging to Council morale: testimonies from human survivors of the various massacres that had followed the Vega betrayal. The broadcasts showed the faces of human children who had lost their parents in Council attacks. They featured elderly humans describing how their peaceful colonies had been bombed without warning. Most devastating of all, they included the final transmission from Captain Jake Morrison, his words calm and determined even as his ship died around him. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the UES Liberty. The Galactic Council betrayed humanity. They used our trust and friendship to plan our destruction. Remember what they took from us. The psychological impact on Council civilian populations was immediate and devastating. For the first time, ordinary aliens saw the faces of the humans their governments had tried to exterminate. They heard testimonies that made it impossible to pretend the attacks had been justified military actions against a dangerous enemy. Council worlds erupted in protests as civilian populations demanded answers from their leaders. The Altarian peace movement gained millions of supporters overnight. Centauri universities held massive demonstrations calling for an end to the conflict. Even the normally rigid Zephyrian society saw unprecedented civil unrest. The Council is fracturing, Dr. Walsh reported with satisfaction. Several member species are questioning whether the betrayal was necessary, or even legal under Council law. The final demonstration of human capability came when Commander Phillips executed the war's most audacious operation. His target was not a military installation or strategic resource, but something far more valuable: the personal flagship of Council leader Zarthek himself. The operation required months of planning and intelligence gathering. Phillips studied Zarthek's travel patterns, identified the weaknesses in his security protocols, and waited for the perfect moment to strike. When the Council leader's ship was traveling between systems with minimal escort, the Ghost Fleet moved. The boarding action lasted only minutes. Human forces disabled the flagship's defensive systems with surgical precision, neutralized the crew with non-lethal weapons, and took control of the bridge before anyone could send a distress signal. They left Zarthek and his staff floating helpless in space for 6 hours before allowing a rescue ship to find them. The message was crystal clear. Humans could have killed the Council's supreme leader but had chosen not to. They had demonstrated both the capability to strike anywhere and the restraint to show mercy when it served their purposes. The psychological impact cannot be overstated, Brooks analyzed in her report. We've shown the Council that their highest leaders are not safe, but we've also demonstrated that we're not mindless killers. They now face an enemy that could destroy them but might choose not to, depending on factors they don't understand. Reports from across Council space confirmed that the operation had achieved its intended effect. Military commanders questioned their ability to protect their own leaders. Civilian populations wondered if their governments could keep them safe from an enemy that seemed capable of striking anywhere at will. Council leader Zarthek himself had been changed by the experience. Intelligence reports suggested he now suffered from severe anxiety and rarely left his heavily fortified residence. The being who had confidently ordered humanity's extermination now jumped at shadows and saw threats everywhere. General Tucker reviewed the strategic situation with growing satisfaction. In 1 year, humanity had transformed from victims of betrayal into the galaxy's most feared military force. They had achieved this not through superior technology or overwhelming numbers, but through psychological warfare that their enemies were completely unprepared to counter. The Council still possessed more ships, better weapons, and greater resources than humanity could hope to match. But none of those advantages mattered against an enemy that fought with fear as their primary weapon and turned the galaxy's own paranoia against itself. 18 months after the Vega betrayal, General Sam Tucker received a communication that would have seemed impossible just 2 years earlier. The Galactic Council was formally requesting a ceasefire and peace negotiations. The message arrived through diplomatic channels that humanity had thought permanently closed, carried by a neutral species that had not participated in the original attacks. Tucker sat in his underground command center reading the Council's transmission with a mixture of satisfaction and cold anger. The beings who had planned humanity's extermination were now begging for mercy from the very species they had tried to eliminate. They're calling it a temporary cessation of hostilities, pending diplomatic resolution, reported Dr. Susan Walsh, who had been analyzing the Council's message for hidden meanings. Their psychological profiles suggest they're hoping to negotiate some kind of return to the previous status quo. Tucker looked at the strategic displays showing human forces positioned throughout Council space like invisible daggers pointed at the heart of galactic civilization. The ghost ships had become legends among alien populations, phantom vessels that could appear anywhere without warning and disappear just as quickly. They still don't understand what they created when they betrayed us, Tucker replied. They think this is a normal war that can be ended with a treaty and some territorial concessions. Admiral Kate Miller entered the briefing room carrying the latest intelligence reports from across the galaxy. Her deep space reconnaissance operations had given humanity complete knowledge of Council military positions, political situations, and civilian morale. The Council had no similar intelligence about human capabilities. General, the psychological collapse is accelerating, Miller reported. 3 more Council species have withdrawn their fleets from active patrol duty. The Altarian government fell last week and was replaced by a peace coalition. The Centauri Alliance is seeing massive demonstrations demanding an end to what they're calling the Shadow War. Tucker studied Miller's reports with the cold satisfaction of a predator that had successfully stalked its prey. Humanity's campaign of psychological warfare had achieved something that conventional military victory never could have accomplished. They had made the galaxy's most powerful civilizations afraid of the dark. Dr. Helen Brooks had been working for months on what she called the final analysis, a complete psychological profile of Council leadership and their likely responses to different negotiation strategies. Her conclusions were as disturbing as they were effective. The Council leaders are trapped by their own fears, Brooks explained during the strategy meeting. They can't admit to their populations that they were wrong to attack humanity because it would destroy their legitimacy. But they also can't continue fighting an enemy they can't understand or predict. The genius of humanity's response had been its restraint combined with demonstrated capability. Every Council leader knew that human forces could have destroyed their worlds, eliminated their populations, or crippled their civilizations. Instead, humanity had chosen to show mercy while making it clear that such mercy was a choice that could be withdrawn at any time. They're more afraid of what we might do than what we've actually done, Walsh added. Fear of the unknown is always more powerful than fear of known threats. Tucker made his decision about the Council's peace overture with the same cold calculation that had guided humanity's entire response to the betrayal. The negotiations would happen, but not on the terms the Council expected or hoped for. Ambassador Paul Davis had survived the past 18 months by adapting to humanity's new reality. The diplomat who had once worked tirelessly to build bridges between species, now prepared to represent a humanity that had become the galaxy's greatest fear. His face bore scars from a Council attack on the embassy station, and his eyes held a hardness that had not been there before the betrayal. "What are our negotiating positions?" Davis asked as he prepared for the most important diplomatic meeting in human history. "We're not negotiating," Tucker replied flatly. "We're delivering terms." The peace talks were held on a neutral station in the Rigel system, far from both Council and human territory. Davis arrived with a small escort of ghost ships that materialized from empty space, just long enough to deliver their passenger before vanishing again. The psychological impact on the Council delegation was immediate and obvious. Council leader Zarthek looked like a broken being compared to the confident leader who had announced humanity's destruction 18 months earlier. His hands shook slightly as he spoke, and his eyes darted constantly around the room as if expecting human attackers to emerge from the shadows. "Ambassador Davis," Zarthek began carefully, "the Council hopes we can find a path back to peaceful coexistence between our species." Davis looked at the assembled alien leaders with an expression that revealed nothing of his inner thoughts. These were the beings who had planned the murder of billions of humans, who had used humanity's trust and friendship as weapons against them, who had celebrated what they thought would be the final solution to the human problem. The Galactic Council betrayed humanity's trust and attempted genocide against our species, Davis stated with mechanical precision. "You used our friendship to plan our destruction. You murdered millions of innocent humans who believed you were their allies." The silence in the negotiation room was complete. Several Council delegates shifted uncomfortably in their seats, unable to meet Davis's steady gaze. "Humanity's response has been measured and proportionate," Davis continued. "We could have destroyed your worlds, eliminated your populations, or collapsed your civilizations. Instead, we chose to demonstrate our capabilities while showing restraint." Zarthek tried to interrupt. "Ambassador, surely we can discuss territorial arrangements or compensation for past misunderstandings." "There are no misunderstandings," Davis cut him off sharply. "There are only consequences." Davis activated a holographic display that showed the true extent of human infiltration throughout Council space. Monitoring stations positioned near every major world, sleeper agents embedded in alien governments, weapons platforms capable of eliminating entire species hidden in asteroid fields and gas giant atmospheres. "Humanity's terms are simple," Davis announced. "Complete withdrawal of all Council forces from human-claimed space. Formal recognition of human sovereignty over our chosen territories. Most importantly, you will live with the knowledge that we are always watching." The Council delegates stared at the display with growing horror as they realized the full scope of humanity's reach. The ghost ships they had been chasing were only the visible part of a much larger intelligence network that had been studying them, learning their weaknesses and preparing for any future conflicts. "You wanted war," Davis said, his voice carrying the weight of every human who had died because of Council betrayal. "We gave you something worse. We gave you fear." The final terms were signed within hours. The Council had no choice but to accept humanity's conditions because the alternative was facing an enemy they could never defeat or even fully understand. They had learned too late that eliminating a threat sometimes creates a far greater danger. Davis returned to Earth carrying the signed agreements that established humanity as the galaxy's most feared power. They had won not through superior firepower or advanced technology, but through something far more effective. They had made themselves unpredictable and unknowable to enemies who valued order and certainty above all else. The memorial to Captain Jake Morrison on Earth bore a new inscription below his final words. It read, "They wanted war. We gave them something worse. We gave them fear."